This is KUTV Primetime News.
Thank you for staying tuned. Now we are focusing on our discussion tonight. Joining us via Zoom is Professor Gitile Naituli, who is the former NCAC Commissioner. Thank you, Professor Naituli, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, now let's focus on what has been unfolding in the political scene recently on the 27th of January. When ODM leader Raila Odinga went to Githurai, we saw a bit of chaos there. In a barrio last week in Kisii, we saw leaders fighting, and therefore people have raised concern concerning the behavior of political leaders and Kenyans as well when it comes to political rallies, given that we're 18 months to the general election and already the political temperatures are heightened. How are you reconciling these particular cases which we're witnessing?
Those are very unfortunate incidences because we think that our democracy has matured enough to allow us to tolerate people who differ with us. So it's unfortunate to find that there are those Kenyans who still think that they must disrupt other people's rallies. It's unfortunate that there are still members of parliament who fight in public, which is an agreement offense, because you realize that fighting in public offense, not just the NCIC Act, but actually two other statutes. It offends the Leadership and Integrity Act, which is the implementing statute for Chapter 6 of the Constitution, and whose responsibility for implementation lies with ethics and corruption. Those people have taken no action on those two members of parliament. It also offends Section 92 of the Penal Code. It has an offense of armed rape, that is fighting in public. Again, the police should have arrested them right there because that was a transgression against Section 92 of the Penal Code. So we find that our institutions are not helping because they have been created to assist us to live peaceably together. For those who don't want to live through straight and narrow, the laws comes to guarantee that they do. So they don't offend our sensibilities.
All right.
So both incidences, the three you have cited, they are very unfortunate and they should not be allowed to continue because as a country, we need to be very careful not to slide back to 205, which is then led to 207.
Yeah. Now, when you look at it, are you seeing our leaders leading by example? And in this case, I'm talking about the top leadership. When you look into what happened in Kisii, we had ODM leader Raila Odinga there in that particular burial. We had Deputy President William Ruto also there in that particular event. In fact, these were their allies who are fighting, and therefore we expected them to castigate this particular scene that Kenyans were treated to. Do you think they're leading by example in terms of the way they're communicating and shunning some of these activities?
No, they are not. Because they don't even appear that some of them they're encouraging it. But you have to understand who started it. Because I understand the one who started by revisiting events of 2007, which we all have agreed we need to forgive each other.
Yes.
Was the MP Fondangoretti, who is Raila supporter. And then the other MP responded. So that does not excuse the two leaders, but also you have to understand that there was another risk involved there. The Deputy President, as a sitting Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, is assigned state security, whose instructions is to defend the Deputy President at any cost. So what those members of parliament were doing were risking the lives of the people who are around there, because those people could panic and shoot. So that's why this incident, I'm shocked that it has not been given the seriousness which it deserves. And that means apprehending the people who caused that fracas in Kisii and presenting them to a court of law. Because it's a serious thing. But you see, we need to be very careful with these leaders of ours also. 205, it is these leaders who who brought this country almost down.
Yeah.
It appears to me that Kenyans are much more mature than their leaders.
All right.
Because Kenyans live very peaceably together. They don't have problems with one another until the elections come. Then the leaders start mobilizing us into tribes, as it were, simply collecting us, putting us in sacks, and selling us like potatoes to one another.
Yeah.
And in that, we need to inject in totality, because we want to live peaceably together without the tribe.
All right. You are former commissioner of NCIC, and now we are having the NCIC being accused, the one that now is being led by Samuel Kobia, being accused of being selective in the way they are handling some of these cases. Some have termed them as a toothless dog, so to speak. From where you're seeing it, do you think NCAC is putting their best foot forward in terms of handling these cases and nibbling them at the bud?
I think in the situation of KC, they are doing their best, because fighting in public is not a vilification of communities. It's not hate speech. That was outright breach of law. So NCIC there, it acted well by basically listing them as in the list of shame. But also NCIC is overwhelmed, because look here, let's just be honest.
All right.
When these senior fellows who are supposed to be guiding us into peace are the one who are breaking the law, sometimes I don't blame the commissioner at the NCIC. They are just overwhelmed. But still, let me just say this. Institutions destroy a country, because the reason why these institutions were set up by the 2010 Constitution is to make sure that we don't go back to 2007.
All right.
So institutions can destroy the country when they are either unwilling or unable to carry out their mandate.
All right.
And it appears to be the case with most of these institutions. Now, institutions are defined by the people who occupy them. So all we can do as citizens is to tell them, please do your job. Don't allow these criminals to destroy our country, because we need it for ourselves and for future generations.
All right. So what do you think, given that you have been part of that commission,
Yes.
what do you think is derailing NCIC? Is it an issue of laws? Is it an issue of funding? Is it an issue of not having the right commissioners to work for the best of the nation? What is really ailing that particular commission years and years on?
I think number one is the issue of laws. The legal framework established in NCIC was deliberately made weak. And I'm saying deliberately because if you look at the legal framework implementing Article 73 on the leadership and the integrity was also made deliberately weak. When you look at the legal framework dealing with the anti-corruption was also made weak by inserting Article 99 subsection 3 of the Act. Right. So we are aware, the political classes are aware of setting up an institution, then denying it the teeth to do its job. That is one. Number two, also they have challenges of resources. I know that because NCIC has a skeleton staff in Nairobi. They need to be in counties.
Yeah.
To be able to effectively monitor these activities by the political class, because we have an extremely reckless political class. And then the other is the political will, basically, for the politicians to live within the law. That is also lacking. But I think you also mentioned an important point here. We have a habit in this country of putting people in public office as a reward, either for loyalty to the state or to repay other connections. And so you find that we don't actually place people in office who can actually execute the mandate of the institutions. So all those encompass not just NCIC, but all the other institutions which are supposed to protect us. So there is generally institutional failure, which is very unfortunate.
All right. Now, when you're talking about the laws, we will look into Parliament. And therefore the question will be now, is now Parliament failing the NCAC, even as it wants at the same time for NCAC to be in check in terms of ensuring that we tame some of these hate speech and violence as we anticipate for the elections, and even as we move past the election. Now, are our leaders in Parliament failing us in terms of ensuring that NCAC has a good legislative framework?
Yeah, I think they're failing us because before I left, we had submitted a review of that NCAC Act, and the review wanted to define clearly what is hate speech, because it's very loosely defined, to separate also NCAC work from when individuals insult each other, because sometimes it's politicians insult each other. That is a different matter altogether. But so strictly focus more on control of hate speech, and but also on uniting the country, on reconciliation. Put more emphasis on reconciling the country, because you remember it's and integration. So there are some areas which we need the Parliament to address. For example, I live in Nakuru. I'm talking to you from Nakuru County.
All right.
When my daughter wanted to get the ID, they asked for my ID. And then they copied. They say she was born in Imero. She has no relationship with Nakuru. She simply copied where I was born. We had seen that for those Kenyans who live in Mombasa, for example, who grandparents went to Mombasa in 1930s. Whether they come from Nyanza or from Western, they still carry their ID reading that they are from those areas. That's not how you integrate the country.
Sure.
We asked Parliament to change all these laws to make sure that wherever it is in Kenya, you are born, that is your account of origin. We can't be returning you back and then talk about integration. All those laws, nothing has been done up to now.
All right.
All those suggestions, they have not been taken on board.
All right.
We also suggested that the University Parliament allocate more resources to NCIC in order to carry out effective civic education. Because what we realized at the Commission was that some issues arise between the communities as a result of failure to understand how government works, how the police works, for example. At Turkana, we will go to Pokot, either Kiro somebody or Stiro Chaos.
Yeah.
The Pokot will immediately start retaliation against the entire Turkana community because they imagine the whole community attacked them. But the normal thing you do is to report the case to the police and allow the police to do the investigation.
Yeah.
These Kenyans need that information. They need to be educated to those facts. But we never give that organization enough resources to do that.
All right. It is really a sad situation there. But now, away from...
Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
It's very sad.
It is really quite sad. Now, away from what
Yes, I can hear you.
Away from what NCAC is facing at the moment, we're having the issue of BBI, and the question has been, we're having the issue of BBI where state agents are now being involved in the BBI process, something that is creating some sort of animosity, with some Kenyans saying they're being bulldozed to endorse this BBI initiative, and therefore it creates some sort of political acrimony. Now, from where you sit, do you think this BBI process should be left to be a political process and not having the government being involved so much in it to a point that now Kenyans are feeling that they are being bulldozed, so to speak?
I think BBI has a problem. You know, our constitution provides for two ways only of which you can change it. One is parliamentary initiative, and the other is public initiative. So you find the BBI is actually driven as a government initiative because we are using government resources. We are seeing our president in driving it, and of course the former Prime Minister. So there's a confusion here. And I think for us to be able to live peaceably in our polity, we need to obey all the laws. We can't choose which laws to obey and which laws to disobey. So there's a problem, and people think that BBA is being forced, even though personally, I see BBA having very serious benefits for Central Kenya. I don't even know why people in Central Kenya don't support it. But then I see at the same time, I see BBA as an extremely bad idea for my country. First is expanding government. What we need right now is smaller government, but honest government, which serves the people of Kenya, but not itself. For Central Kenya, I think a mistake was made in Naivasha because I don't like the formula, which is now used for revenue for distribution of this money, which I also think it should not be distributed at all. You see, this is at the 5 or 15%. I feel very strongly that we should have simply funded the development project only, because we have now turned all the counties into employment bureaus. That fuels consumption. Consumption does not grow a country. You see, some time back, there is a Tunisian author who wrote a book on why Africa will not develop, because he said in Africa, the primary industry is administration. Administration is consumer of resources. It does not create value. And so, by expanding the parliament, by expanding the executive, we are simply concentrating on administration. By giving money to counties, without tying it to specific development projects, we are encouraging them to employ their relatives, to employ their campaign supporters. We are encouraging consumption. So, and thought actually BBA will concentrate on reducing the size of government, reducing the number of counties, reducing the representation because it's already too high. But I think it went round. And now we're having a process where it appears that they have to force it because it looks like the Kenyans are not into it at all.
All right. Now, only 18 months to the general election, and we're having the BBI on our neck. We're having the 2022 politics right after the referendum quest. What do you think we should expect from our political leaders and NCAC, given that we're expecting the political temperatures to be heightened, we're expecting leaders to sort of disagree? What will be your advice to political leaders in terms of ensuring there's decorum even when we disagree?
I think my advice is we need to accept that the differences are normal, very normal. So we appreciate those who differ with us. We also need to appreciate the fact that we are Kenyans, and those who disagree with us are not our enemies. They were our opponents. We need to appreciate the fact that we are playing in the same team, and that team is called Kenya. We need to appreciate the fact that the politicians will be politicians, but we insist that they work, they do their politics within the law, and that they should not try to divide us. We need also to advise the politicians to please stop playing the tribal card. The country has grown. 50 years we have grown. We live together very peacefully. We trust each other. So stop bringing us back to the tribe. Find an agenda for development that we can imbibe. Give us your wonderful, beautiful, brilliant brains, and we will take you without your tribe. We don't want to know which tribe you are. All we want to know is that you have an agenda to develop this country, that we will expand the economy so that our children can get jobs. That is my advice. Because the idea of playing the tribal card, the leaders who do that, these are bankrupt leaders. Leaders with no idea, so they retreat to mobilizing the tribe. That is something that we should not be doing at this day and age. You have to understand that in just 50 years ago, the United Arab Emirates was poorer than Kenya. Today, they have put an orbiter on Mars. We are talking about leadership in Kenya. We are talking about BBI. We are not doing any serious research. We don't have a serious program that can lift this country from poverty. I think we need to rethink our strategies. And more important, we need to trust one another. We need to understand that those who differ with us are also Kenyans. They love this country. It's just that they have a different opinion on how the country should run.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Professor Naituli, for giving us that perspective on what should be done to ensure political intolerance in the country, even as we head for 2022 general elections and the referendum quest through the BBI process. Many thanks indeed. We are
Thank
taking
you very much. Yes.
All right, we're taking a short break, but we'll be back with more on what is happening in the country and beyond our borders. Do stay tuned.